Hey everybody, you ready for a nice relaxing fun little Sunday fun day? So it's a nice little Sunday morning here, and I had a nice long couple-hour conversation late last night about 1, 2 to 3 in the morning, and the topic was so interesting I really wanted to share it with everybody. And it's a very by the way, side note, next week should be the first video of the new financial videos on the new set. I'm very excited to show everybody. It should be pretty fun. Okay, so I was having a complex conversation with another gentleman, and it spilled over to the topic of magic cards, and the topic at hand was, how come certain cards and new cards and singles and boxes have that race to the bottom and the prices drop a lot or very dramatically, when other products, no matter what happens, even if more supply hits the market, it doesn't move the price? How come certain products seem to bend easier with price movements and certain newer cards and prices don't seem to move at all? And I thought this was actually a really interesting topic that I wanted to go over with everybody. I thought you guys would really appreciate this. So first things first, let's start with the basic. You know, when a new Magic set comes out, all the prices, and anybody who pre-ordered any cards, historically you lose your butt. All the single cards from pre-order to about 30 days to 60 to 90 days after release, to when allocation period ends, most cards depreciate substantially, usually 20 to 60%. Ouch. Now, of course, you have a few cards that always end up spiking, and there are always going to be surprises. But even if you speculate on that correct card, your losses on all the other ones, you still have a net negative, or as they say, you took on so much risk, you still didn't really make any real money. And how come older products, let's pick on any reserve list card. Let's just pick on, I don't even know. I don't know, Library of Alexandria or a Mox or something. If you take an old card, and right now, if somebody has a Mox Jet, and 5 more Mox Jets go up on eBay, you're not going to see a price movement. You're not going to see a big difference in pricing. Now, usually most of those high-end cards also don't get auctioned off, as most new cards also are fixed price listings on eBay or TCG Player. But what's interesting is how the price elasticity changes based on the owner of the card and based on the owners of these assets and how much of a haircut they're willing to lower prices, and also based on how much money or net worth that individual is. And to put it very bluntly and politically incorrectly, whether that person is rich or poor. You know, you guys want raw information? There's a difference between someone who has a lot of money and someone who is normal middle class and somebody who's struggling or in debt on how the market moves those items. And I found the conversation to be quite intriguing, and it really kind of sparked a very in-depth conversation, and I wanted to share with you all today. So when we pick out a new card on any new set, card ABC, the single card, let's say it's pre-ordering at $10 a card, it releases at $7 a card, and 90 days after release, when allocation period's over, that $10, which became $7, it leveled out now at $3 to $4. Let's just pretend, or $5. Let's make it an even number, half price. How come, even if an old card gets moved or an old sealed product, why doesn't it experience the same amount of price elasticity? How come that rubber band doesn't stretch as far downwards? And again, in the rubber band theory economics, the more you pull the rubber band down in price, the more it wants to pull back up against you. It has that inverse feel. It wants to go back to its higher price because of, as they say, price memory. So it's a really fascinating topic, everybody. And I wanted to use this example on sealed product today. That's what I really want to focus on now that I gave you an intro. On sealed product, let's have a fun video here. So on sealed product, let's pick on Dominaria. That's a good one. So Dominaria is out of print. For the longest time, Dominaria was on eBay for $90 to $100 a box. Right when it went out of print, there was a hardcore knee-jerk reaction where the box price went from that average 95 to immediately 125. You had an insta 20-30% price movement. And ever since then, it really never has gone up higher or lower. It just kind of sits there plus or minus a couple percentage or a couple basis points. It just doesn't move much. So why is that? Now, let's say scenario A, somebody comes along and dumps 500 boxes of Dominaria on the open market. Would that really move the price of Dominaria boxes? Or is it up to that individual to crush the price, but then it'll go back to the higher price when he sells out? How come a revised booster box, if somebody took 20 revised booster boxes, put them all on eBay at a lower price, how come everybody else doesn't lower their price to try to undercut them? You guys see what I'm saying? If there's a $10,000 revised booster box, and somebody says, I've got 100 of them, I'm going to put it up for $9,000. You don't see the other 3-4 people with the item drop their price to $8,000 or $7,000. You don't see that. But on the new cards, in the local game store doing the mass box opening, if somebody undercuts by a penny, they'll drop theirs by 50 cents. They screw you. I have 100 copies of this rare. Instead of $3, you did $2.99. I'll go $2.49. And they crush the price instantly by 20%. And what's really interesting about that is, I think it's actually a side effect of the owner and individual person's situation. Almost like, is that owner under duress? Are they under financial pressure? Are they under leverage? Do they have to pay the distributor on 30-day net terms? Do they have to pay a credit card bill in 2 to 3 weeks? Or are they 4 weeks? So the behavior of being under pressure, no pun intended, seems to accelerate and add a layer of risk to new products. And I find that really intriguing. So because it doesn't affect the old ones, you don't see that. So that brings me to the next part of the conversation. If there's a strong economic downturn, would that force the higher end people who are very price resistant to lowering? Would that make them lower the prices to actually want to compete or raise capital? And obviously the answer to that is going to be simply, it depends if that rich person becomes less rich or desperate to pay their $100,000 a month mortgage or their 15 Ferrari payments. I don't know. Something like that. So the outside variables really dictate the movement and the price elasticity, that how much it stretches up or down, more than the actual magic product itself. And I think that's really interesting, because if you zoom out further now, you can say, okay, so Rudy, you're pretty much telling me and everybody else that outside variables play a bigger role than the expected value of the old booster box or the supply of the old booster box. Yes, I actually am saying that. On a lot of rarer, more high-end things that are held by individuals that don't really care about day-to-day bills and money, price growth and price movement has more of the value is derived more from those rich people scenarios. Because in other words, what will make them lower the price? In other words, you have to manhandle and force them to raise or lower the price to make them want to sell. But if these people don't have any motivation to sell, in other words, they need money, which is usually the number one motivator. Sometimes it's different things, like they got caught, banging 2 other chicks and there's a divorce, or maybe they got caught with 2 dudes and 1 guy and 3 chicks at the same time. And maybe there's something personal and legal things going on. That's a bad day. Maybe something like that. It was kind of the tipping point. But overall, usually the main reason is financial duress, something that really just pushes them or squeezes them financially to make them say, hey, I got to sell these revised booster boxes and I got to crunch the price down to $2,000, undercut everybody. You see my point? So I found that interesting. So if you keep using those kind of properties and zooming out further and further, you can kind of start deriving simpler and simpler answers from those type of derivatives, if you want to sound professional and educated. Remember, I'm a high school dropout in my parents' basement, so don't take me serious. Remember, entertainment channel only. It pretty much sums up that the appreciation of a lot of Magic sealed products specifically, the value in the pricing is derived more from non-Magic variables. And I think that's very fascinating for me, because so many times patrons and people who watch the channel, and even in the comments section, even the 3% beautiful ladies, it's always, Rudy, what do you think? You think I should invest in Ixalan products now they're out of print? Rudy, you think I should invest in the Ravnica sets since they're still in print? It's easy to get cheap. They have Shocklands. Well, the Ixalan, those cards are in Challenger decks. Those are worthless. So what about Dominaria? Oh, they'll get reprinted too. I mean, you don't want to. But the thing is, while the majority of basic MTG finance professionals seem to focus and have their attention around the topic of the EV and the cards in the set and, oh, print to demand. Oh my God, run away. Run as fast as you can. I don't think, now again, the majority of products in the center of that bell curve, the most likely answer in that bell curve is going to be, it's the cards in the set don't affect the appreciation of the sealed box at all. Because the people who have those sealed boxes are the type of investor that has a lot of discipline. Price movement doesn't affect them. Economic booms and busts don't affect them as much. And they don't really have that urge to rip the boxes open and crack packs. They have the discipline to keep it sealed. So it's very difficult to work with those individuals and try to get pricing power or leverage over those people to sell at perhaps a lower price point. And I think that's kind of backwards compared to what all these professional, successful, sponsored, Wizards approved with the ivory towers and lab coat people tell you, because, you know, if you look at Iconic Masters and Masters 25, I've been spending a lot of time looking at those sets. I'm sorry for those of you who are tired of me bringing up those two master sets, but the fact they were premium products that failed and then 2 years later became a wealth-building monster, it's an amazing case study to discuss with everybody. It's similar to Battle Bond and Conspiracy. I bring those up a lot because the case study deserves a lot of attention, because you need to really analyze what happened along the timeline, and I don't want the information to be lost as the years go by. So a lot of these topics I put on camera because in 5 years from now, most of the Magic community and players are going to have no clue what happened at the release of Iconic Masters, the behind-the-scenes distributors, the price drops, and everything that went on, and then when people were making fun of me with it, people aren't going to remember this in years from now. So I think it's very important to really hammer in and learn from what happened here, because there will be another cycle similar to it. Whether it's Modern Horizons 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the new Modern Master Series, or it's some other premium product coming, which I think there's another one coming. We just don't know what it is yet. She had it coming, and I know she's coming. Is that, nope, no giggity, professional video today. And, you know, it's important to learn from this stuff, everybody. And it's important to have a good conversation where we can lay out the facts, have no emotion, have no political craziness and who loves, hates Wizards and card quality and all the other problems in the world. It's important to focus on what actually happened with the numbers and what caused it and where are we. And that's what we're doing today. So when I look at like the Masters 25 scenario, when so many boxes disappeared, the supply is so low, those boxes ended up somewhere. So assuming investor A has the position, and that person has that much capital to dump 50, 100, or 200, 300,000 to wipe out that inventory on the open market, that person clearly is not going to be able to be manipulated or leveraged or put into a financial duress situation to be able to dump them back on the market for a lower price. It's a one-way street. So when you look at that, it almost creates a low-risk scenario with a higher probability of reward, because somebody else just came out, removed all the boxes below $200 a box, and almost established a floor price for all of us. Because someone like that with that kind of capital to wield is not going to put them back on the market at a lower price. And it almost creates like a little, maybe not a good word choice, but it almost creates like an invisible floor, or like a safety insurance for you finance people. It's almost like buying put protection. It has some sort of downside protection if volatility flares up, or if there's an overall market shakeup on a large scale, where, and I mean, like the water level goes down, all the ships go down together. It creates very strange scenarios, and I find that fascinating when you compare it to somebody who's going to buy 500 rares from Core 2020, and everyone's trying to figure out which $3 rare is going to be the next $10 rare. And when you look at that scenario, the people who are going to do that, those aren't people with the same type of financial strength and the discipline and mindset to hold the position and be able to handle the swings without cracking and all this product spills back on the market. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of these items behave differently long term. And things like this very, very heavily fascinate me. And I find them very intriguing that sometimes you have to look at things so different that when you talk about it, like in this video, people may not understand you, or people may just not like it. Like when this video gets a bunch of thumbs down, you have to stand back and just say, what particular aspect is someone not understanding, or did they even watch the video, or whatever it may be? Because when you look at the data just shows certain facts. It's not really opinionated. It's just kind of like, well, this is what happens. A lot of things we all agree and a lot of things we all disagree with. But on the topic of this, I think the conclusion of what I'm getting at is it really shows the stability and the strength, and quite possibly that high-end investing in old ABU cards, graded cards, raw cards, and sealed product might have a lower risk level than I initially thought. It may actually be less riskier than I actually originally had kind of visualized in my head, because the swings to the downside may not be as possible as probable is a better word. The downside swing of bringing Masters 25. Masters 25 is averaging around 220 to 240 now. The downside risk of lowering $220 price to back to the original 140, 150 is so low, it would almost require a black swan style market event to move that down. And I think it's almost impossible. It's very improbable. When you hit probability so low, it starts to bump up against the word impossible. Improbable, as you drop further and further. Remember, it's kind of like the Half-Life scenario. When you deal with statisticians and stats in general and economies and all this stuff, there's no such thing as an absolute or a zero. But as you go lower and lower in the probability, you can never touch zero, and you can never touch guaranteed. But you can get closer and closer infinitely to that line. And I think that a lot of the probability of like Masters 25 going back to 140, 150 from a year ago is literally something like less than 1%. And if somebody comes to you and says, well, the probability of losing 40% of your money at $200 to 140 a box is less than 1%, I mean, that's incredible sounding. That tells you that there's a 99% chance it's not going to touch that price point. So, and that gets into a whole other video for my financial videos coming up in the future. But I wanted to talk about, just spill my mindset on the difference between the price movements of these new things, also known to the community as the race to the bottom. When these new magic products always come out, the number one issue and fear and panic anxiety stores get when they do mass box opening, for those of you out there who still do mass box openings, most stores have thrown in the towel in the Ixalan and Amonkhet era, and I don't know how many people are doing mass box openings anymore. And I can look on eBay in the open market, and you can see who's doing the mass box openings, because you can find the sellers with high amounts of rares of the same, 50 or 100 of the same rare. Or if they have circuit breakers, every 10 they sell, they relist, But overall, you don't see that as much. And I think it's because anyone who's attempted to go down that path has learned that the risk and the race to the bottom is so stressful, and the risk incurred is so high, that the rate of return and the probability of a certain profit, it just isn't worth it. And therefore, sealed product continues to become a more mainstream thing. Now, of course, you can't talk about sealed product like Fight Club. You can't talk about sealed product or certain, aspects of it on message boards and Reddit and to a lot of other professionals and paywalls, because they're all going to just attack you and create emotion out of it versus just having a straight financial, just a numerical conversation with no emotion. Most people, you can't have conversations like that in 2019, which is unfortunately, and fortunately for me, unfortunately, it's bad for the general public in discussing open information. Fortunately for people like me, it creates a lot more followers for me and patrons. I have a lot of patrons, shameless Rudy plug, gotta do it. I have a lot of patrons who literally feel the monthly fee of just talking to me once a week or something, and they send a message that's complicated, and they, once a week or once a month about things like this has more value than even buying $79 standard boxes. And that's very interesting, and I really respect that, because the knowledge and communication to be able to have these conversations has a lot of value. And if you're in the industry, it has a lot of potential to learn. That learning curve, you can jump that curve a lot quicker when you can have good conversations with people. So Sunday morning Rudy, that's kind of my conclusion. And I think the conclusion of the whole thing, to sum it up for you all, is number one, I think sealed product that's older and out of print, anything out of print past a year or so, I'm actually starting to think the risk level is lower than I initially thought. Big crash coming. Oh, it's all going to be worthless one day. Oh, it's going to, the same stuff I've heard for 20 years in a row. And I'll hear for the next 20 years in a row, even though I'm probably not going to be on camera in 5 years from now. The point is, it'll always exist. In these videos, unless, one day Wizards will eventually ban me, I'm sure. Eventually, when that day comes and everything comes to an end, until then, it's a good learning curve. This is information for everybody to learn and really expand and help your brain understand more about the world. Because these things I'm talking about with Magic and these boxes and price elasticity when it comes to new cards and how they just stretch and tank versus old product, it can be applied to a lot of things between real estate, crypto, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, people who do options trading, and everything in between. Even other hobbies like the comics and coins and even, collectible cars and stamp collectors and everything. It all has the same principles. So as I wrap this video up, I just wanted to kind of, re-summarize that. And I think that's why a lot of people, we see this big conversion and this new wave of people being more interested in sealed product. Because I think the data from the last few years has been very shocking to me. And it's been very shocking to the public, clearly, all of us, about how appreciation has returned for new sealed products. Even though it's been printed into oblivion type of mindset, has continued to suppress that type of business model and make people believe that that business model no longer exists, or as AKA, that business model is dead. When the reality is it isn't. And the reality is most stores don't sit on inventory. Most stores aren't doing it. That is one of the biggest variables that also catapulted the conspiracy, the battle bond, and it's another reason Ultimate Masters is stagnant, because everybody looked at it as an investment. Everybody looked at the Timmy boxes as an investment to flip. That's the reason why the battle bonds, the conspiracies, the print to demand, in my next future set of the year for 2020 is going to be Modern Horizons, because these are products that it's a contrarian style approach. And as long as everybody bashes it, and the more we learn together, even myself, about the movement of prices and really how much downside risk do we have, we all get a better understanding of the future direction and sustainability of this stuff. So that's a lot of words. I don't think I should